if we're not studied up, then it's easy for any doctrine to come in and kind of sway us this way and sway us that way, and pretty soon we're that double-minded thing that Jacob's talking about. So, Rosh means head. We can consider how easily we become shaken by our emotions, and that our resolve to seek Yahuwah Elohim first becomes easily replaced by perception of our own authorities over Elohim's. This takes us back to considering, why did Adam disobey? Why did Adam transgress was our question. Because having gained the knowledge of good and evil, just like when a child hits 13, all of a sudden they know everything. And that those of us who have lived, I can't remember how old I was when my child hit 13, but we lived a substantial amount of time longer than that child, and we certainly know more than what that child knows. So all of a sudden Adam knows more than Elohim. All of a sudden Adam knows more than his creator. Do we consider our authority over Elohim's? It's something to consider. We think about this as we read that the tower was to reach into heaven. And then we ask, do we consider our authority above Elohim's? This tower was to reach into heaven, to the top. In the book of Yasher, and this is a book that's spoken of in both Joshua and in Samuel. This is a book of history. Yasher actually means the complete telling. We read that it was humankind's intent to reach the domain of Elohim in order to do war with the heavens. And we read in this book of Yasher that as they got higher and higher, they actually began to shoot arrows into heaven. Is it possible to become so entwined and twisted up in one's own pride and emotion as to see one's authority as being greater than that of Yahweh Elohim, to where one takes credit for all of their accomplishments in life? Okay? Yes, we have done things and we've accomplished things. There's nothing to say that we don't deserve some credit for doing the things we do, but it was Yahuwah Elohim who has provided for all that we have and all that we are. We may have done the work and put forth the effort, but it was Yahuwah Elohim that opens the doors and creates the opportunity that exists. Okay? So, yes, I'm good at what I do, and I should be pleased that I can do the things that I do. But I should be grateful to my Elohim for making it possible for me to find a place to apply what I do. So we see the arrogance of this, deceiving pride in the next phrase, which is Venaseh lanu Shem. Let us make a name. Let us make a name. And we could just go on that topically and say, let us make a name. I want to make a name for myself. The root of Venaseh, let us make, comes from the root asa, which means, among a long list of definitions, to do, to accomplish, to produce, and to celebrate. Now the word Shem means name, but it also means reputation, fame, and glory. So that they wish to do, accomplish, and produce, and celebrate their fame, their reputation. They wanted to glorify themselves, is what we're seeing here. The root of Shem is Sum, which also means to appoint, to lay hands on by violence, to transform, to tread down, and to ordain. Have we ever seen in history where people who wanted to make a name for themselves? I'm sure that history doesn't have any examples of anybody who tried to make themselves something great through extreme violence and tyranny, and I'm sure there's no examples of that in history anywhere, or am I mistaken?
Certainly not today.
So we see that there's a progression in making a name. How do you go about making a name? It's not wrong to be known, but it's wrong to be known and say, I want to be worshipped. I want adoration. I want people to celebrate me. Because the other root of Shem is Shamayim, that means heaven. So in this, we have an idea presented that the actions that people were taking here were presumed to be equal to those of Elohim, and that humankind was equal to Elohim. So we say, and nowadays I hear it a lot because there is several passages throughout Tanakh that say, aren't we all Elohims? Aren't we all gods? The New Age thing that's coming out is, you are God. There's a book. How many people have heard the saying, let go and let God? Actually, that's a great saying, let go and let God. People freak out when they find out that that book was written by a man named Anderson, who was basically a lecturer in metaphysics. And this book is called 3 Magic Words, and that's actually one of the topics, is let go and let God. And at the end of the book, the last chapter of the book, the 3 magic words are, you are God. So let go and let God. What God are you allowing? What Elohim are you allowing? So it's something to think about. So the next phrase to consider is pen nafutz al panei kal haaretz, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole world. The word pen, lest, means otherwise, but it also means to beware. This word finds its root in pana, which means to turn, but it also means to empty. The next word is nafutz, which means not only to scatter, but to be broken into pieces. So what can we get from that, based on some of the things that we've considered in the past? That not to turn, not to beware, being broken into pieces. That if we are a vessel, perhaps, and that if we don't pay attention, and if we don't turn, if we don't make teshuvah, that eventually it's going to fall apart, and we will be broken into pieces. And like we talked about last week, those broken pieces of pottery are what's used to write inscriptions on. But we only get a partial message if we're broken. We have to be whole. And how do we become whole? Is we have to go to the potter's house, and inside the potter's house is where we find the restoration that comes from Yahweh. And we have an example of that. It's Matthew 26:6. Most of our King Jimmy-based Bibles say that Yeshua was in the house of Simon the leper. But Aramaic shows us that he was in the house of Simon the potter. And that makes sense, because Elohim is the master potter. You go into the house of the master potter to become restored, and inside is the restoration, redemption, and deliverance that comes from Yahuwah that will restore us to a whole piece of pottery. That Yeshua is inside the house of the potter. So there's something that it's kind of telling us that if we keep going in this direction, we're going to be broken eventually. But we're looking at it from their point of view. This word finds its root in pana, which we said means empty, but the next word to consider is nafutz, which means not only to scatter, be broken into pieces. So we ask ourselves, how will I be remembered? It's always a question that seems to be ingrained in our subconscious. And really, I mean, it's a question that I guess everybody asks themselves. How am I going to be remembered when I'm gone? And we all want to make our mark on the world. But when this starts to become our focus in life, then it starts to become a problem, I think. How will I be remembered? It's always a question that's lurking in our subconscious. Were these people in Shinar trying to make themselves out to be great, even greater than Elohim, in order to become immortal? In asking this, we have to consider another question that is perhaps of greater importance that comes from the last part of this verse, upon the face of the whole earth. In its simplest terms, the Hebrew of this verse says, in the face of and in the presence of our neighbors. So the question that this generates is how others will remember me, or how will others remember me, be more important than considering how Yahweh, who is my Elohim, remembers me? Or is how other people remember me more important than how Yahweh, who is my Elohim, remembers me? Is what people think about me more important than what my Elohim thinks about me now? And here's the history part. So there was a Roman emperor named Nero, and everybody's heard of Nero, that he was the tyrant that was a bloodthirsty, crazy guy. But he began his rule as a good man. He was a caring man. It's said, according to history and the historians, that during this fire in Rome that he's accused of setting in order to blame the Christians, but it's said that during this fire in Rome, he was actually trying to save people. He opened his private gardens for people to escape to. He was trying to do what he could to save the city and to care for the people that were dying in the city. But it's what happened afterwards that kind of started on the rocky path. Rome was burned to the ground. The Senate was wanting to move the capital to another province and start over. And Nero said, no, we're going to rebuild Rome. His advisor Seneca had told him that there are some times that you have to rule with the mind of a god. So Nero put together this beautiful plan for rebuilding Rome, made out of marble and stone instead of wood, with art flowing everywhere. And he became obsessed with doing this. And the money started to run out. He was having a 150-foot tall statue of himself built. And the money started to run out, and his mind started to go deep inside saying, I am a god, I am a god. You cannot tell me what I need to do. So he stopped listening to his advisors. He started ordering the wealthy in all the provinces, the richest men, that they were ordered by the emperor to leave everything to the empire and their wills and commit suicide in order to get the money to continue building Rome. He sacked the Roman temples. He stole away precious heirlooms that had been in Rome for all this time. And as he slipped into this, he got crazier and crazier and crazier, seeing himself as a god. And finally, the Senate got together and had to vote him an enemy of the state, and he was forced to kill himself in exile. But we see what happens to the mind, that when we start seeing ourselves as more than Elohim, when I start saying that I am God, that I can do all things through me that strengthens me, we see that we can take it to extremes and actually not only ruin our lives, but ruin the lives of everybody around us. Or not ruin our lives, but we can make our lives miserable, and we can make everybody else around us miserable. It's my way or the highway. I'm the only one that has an opinion as to how to do something. You shouldn't tell me what to do. I know how to do this. Your opinion is valueless. You know, I've worked for people that were this way. I've worked for, or I've had guys work for me that were this way. And it's a state of spiritual poverty. And it's an extreme state of spiritual poverty. So the question that we ask is, what is the condition of your heart? Again, this question can only be answered by Elohim, and to know the answer requires time spent in study and prayer. What we've considered in this study is in essence the manifestation of spiritual poverty, and it's a lot like the spiritual poverty that manifested itself in a demonic spirit that was cast out of a boy by Yeshua. The story is that the disciples were trying to cast out this demon from this child, and they couldn't do it. And Yeshua shows up and he casts this demonic entity out. And the disciples asked him, we tried, we did it in your name, but we couldn't do it. And Yeshua said, this type only comes out through fasting and through prayer. So, in order to protect ourselves from this manifestation taking us, we have to stay connected to our Elohim, because only staying connected to our Elohim will we be able to examine the condition of our heart, because we have a guideline that tells us this is how it should be, this is how it should not be. So we are actually seeking Elohim through his restoration to restore us and to bring us rest. So we can add that question to our list of questions is, what is the condition of your heart? Kind of wordy, but building towers, we all build towers, we all do things. And in the midst of building those towers, we're going to affect somebody. It's like Bruce said, sometimes we have to affect somebody in the wrong way. But we have to consider also what the condition of our heart is when we're doing what we're doing, and what is the ultimate outcome going to be. So any questions on this? Going once? Going twice? Grooviness has been achieved.